The chapel doors burst open. Wind roared inside like something alive, tearing through stained glass light and scattering it across the trembling crowd. And there, at the center of it all, the Grand Duke of Ravenshade was on his knees, not bowed, not weakened. Kneeling like something was breaking him from the inside out, dark veins of blackened magic crawled up his neck like living ink. His gloved hands were shaking violently against the marble floor, cracking it beneath his grip. And above him, suspended in the air, a bride in a white gown, her veil ripped back, her eyes wide with terror but not fear of him. Fear of what he was becoming. A voice echoed through the cathedral, deep, layered, not fully human. You should not have brought her here. The chandeliers exploded one by one, glass rained like knives. The Duke lifted his head slowly, and for a fraction of a second, his eyes met hers. Not monster, not man. Something trapped between both. He whispered almost silently, run before it finishes what it started. The curse ignited, and everything went white. They said the Grand Duke of Ravenshade had not smiled in 7 years. They also said no one who got close enough to serve him ever stayed alive long enough to retire. And yet, despite that, the kingdom still obeyed him. Because power doesn't need kindness, only fear. Elena Hart had none of that fear when she arrived at the Capitol gates. Only exhaustion. And a letter sealed in black wax. A royal decree, not a request. A sentence. By order of the crown, Miss Elena Hart is hereby bound in marriage to His Grace, the Grand Duke of Ravenshade. The carriage driver wouldn't even look at her when he dropped her off. The gates of Ravenshade Manor opened slowly, like they were deciding whether to swallow her whole. The first person she saw was not a servant, it was a knight, armored head to toe, standing perfectly still like a statue that had forgotten how to breathe. "You're late," he said, flatly. "I wasn't aware I had a choice in timing," Elena replied. Silence. Then the knight stepped aside. "You don't. Inside the manor, everything was too quiet, not peaceful, controlled. Even the fire in the hearth seemed afraid to crackle too loudly." Elena was led through long halls lined with portraits. Every face she passed had the same expression, judgment or warning. Finally, she was brought to a massive set of doors. The knight stopped. "He will see you now. That sounds like a threat," Elena muttered. "It is." The doors opened. He didn't look at her immediately. The Grand Duke stood with his back turned, staring out over the dark valley beyond his window. Black coat, silver insignia. Stillness so complete it felt unnatural. Then he spoke. "You're smaller than I expected. I wasn't selected for my size," Elena replied. That earned her something rare. A pause. He turned slowly, and for a moment she understood why the entire kingdom feared him. Not because he looked cruel, because he looked exhausted, like something inside him had been burning for a very long time. "You're here because of a mistake," he said. "I doubt the crown makes mistakes that expensive," she replied. His eyes flicked to hers, sharp, measuring, dangerous. "You will leave in a month," he said. "That's oddly specific. You will not survive longer than that if you stay." A chill moved through the room, not from the air, from him. Elena should have stepped back. She didn't. Instead, she asked quietly, "Why does everyone in this castle speak like I'm already dead?" For the first time, something in his expression fractured, just slightly, like a crack in glass. "Because," he said, "most of them have seen what happens to those I get close to." That night, Elena didn't sleep, the manor whispered. Not metaphorically, literally. Soft sounds behind walls that shouldn't exist, doors that weren't there during the day, and at exactly midnight, screaming, far away. Then silence again. Elena walked the halls barefoot, following instinct instead of fear. She found him in the courtyard. The Grand Duke stood alone under the moonlight, barefoot, hands covered in faint black markings that pulsed like veins. He was speaking in a language she didn't recognize. Or maybe something was speaking through him. The air around him bent. The ground cracked slightly beneath his feet. And then he collapsed to his knees. Elena rushed forward before she could think. "Don't come closer," he warned instantly, voice strained. Too late. She was already there, and when she touched his shoulder, the world stopped. Pain, not hers, his, but she felt it like it was inside her own bones. Images flashed. A throne made of bones, a crown burning black, a woman screaming his name, and something ancient laughing in the dark. Elena gasped and pulled back. The Duke looked up at her sharply. "You shouldn't be able to do that," he said. "Do what?" "Survive contact." Silence stretched between them. Then something even stranger happened. The markings on his skin faded. Just slightly. He noticed it immediately. So did she. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I didn't do anything." Elena said, shaken, but even she didn't believe it, because for the first time in years, the pain in his expression had lessened. Over the next days, she learned the rules of Ravenshade. Do not enter the West Wing. Do not speak to the servants after dusk. Do not approach the Duke when the markings appear. And above all, do not ask about the curse. Of course, Elena asked anyway. That was the problem. You think it's a curse, he said one evening, almost amused. What else would it be? A sentence. For what crime? His silence was long enough to feel like punishment. Then, I loved someone once. That stopped her completely. You don't look like the type, she said carefully. I wasn't the type then either. The air grew heavier. She died, he said, and something in me broke in a way it couldn't repair. Elena frowned. That doesn't sound like a curse. It wasn't the death that did it, he added quietly. It was what answered it. A distant bell rang somewhere in the manor. Once. Twice. And every candle in the room flickered black for a second before returning to normal. The Duke stood abruptly. His expression changed instantly. Cold again. Controlled again. You should leave this place while you still can, he said. Elena hesitated. And if I don't, his eyes met hers. For a second, something unguarded slipped through. Then it will notice you too. That night, Elena woke to silence. Not the manor's usual kind. A deeper silence. Like the world itself was holding its breath. She stepped into the hallway and found every mirror in the house shattered, except one, at the end of the corridor, still intact, and in it something was standing behind her. Not reflected, but present. Elena turned slowly. Nothing there. She looked back at the mirror. The Grand Duke was in it now, standing behind her, eyes dark, voice low. It's awake. Elena didn't move. Her breath caught halfway between inhale and panic. Behind her, nothing. But in the mirror, the Grand Duke stood only inches away. His reflection wasn't aligned with reality. It never was, because in the mirror world, he was already closer than he should have been. It's awake, he repeated. The glass rippled, not like water, like skin remembering pain. Elena spun around instantly. Empty hallway. No one, no footsteps. No breath, only the sound of every candle in the manor simultaneously going out. Darkness swallowed everything, and then a whisper inside her ear. Not his voice, something older. Finally, she can see us. When the lights returned, the Duke was standing at the end of the corridor. Real this time. Solid. Controlled. But something had changed. The air around him felt heavier, like pressure before a storm. You saw it, he said. Elena swallowed. The mirror wasn't normal. No, he replied. It never is here. He stepped closer, and for the first time, he looked less like a ruler, more like someone carrying something unbearable alone for too long. This manor is not cursed, he said quietly. It is the containment. Elena frowned. Containment of what? The Duke hesitated. That hesitation mattered, because men like him didn't hesitate unless truth had teeth. Something that doesn't belong in this world, he said, and it lives under this house. The manor changed that night. The story shifted backwards. The Duke didn't want to remember it, but the curse always remembers first. 6 years ago, the Grand Duke was not feared. He was respected, strategic, calm, the kind of ruler who ended wars before they began. And then, the expedition returned from the northern ruins. Only one soldier survived. He was blind, burned, and repeating one sentence over and over. It learned his name. That night, the Duke went to the ruins himself, against every warning, against every law of survival. Because power convinces men they are exceptions to consequences. The ruins were not ruins. They were a door, and beneath it, something was waiting, not buried, sleeping. The Duke found the chamber deep underground. Carvings covered every surface, not written. Pressed into stone like something had been forced to forget how to escape. And at the center, a throne. Empty. Until he stepped closer, that's when it spoke. Not aloud, inside his mind, you will carry me.
Right now, Elena still thinks she's just trapped in a cursed marriage. But what she doesn't realize is that the manor isn't reacting to the Duke anymore. It's reacting to her. And whatever is under that house has been waiting for someone like Elena for a very long time. The real question is, why her? Because nothing about this feels accidental.
He should have left. He didn't, because he heard her. Someone else. Screaming from somewhere impossible. And when he reached toward the throne, he made the first mistake. He answered. Back in the present, Elena stepped away from him. You didn't just get cursed, she said slowly. You accepted it. The Duke's jaw tightened. I tried to control it and failed. A pause. No, he said quietly. I succeeded. That answer chilled her more than anything else. The candles flickered again. But this time, they didn't go out. They burned black. Elena took a step back. What does that mean? The Duke looked at his hands, at the faint markings returning. They don't just feed on me, he said. They respond to me. A distant sound echoed through the manor, like chains dragging across stone from beneath them. Elena started noticing the inconsistencies. The servants never looked directly at mirrors. They never walked in pairs after sunset. And no one, absolutely no one, spoke the Duke's full title after dark. One night she followed a maid, down a corridor she had never seen before. Even though she had walked the manor 100 times, the walls changed when she wasn't looking directly at them. Like the building was rearranging itself to confuse memory. The maid stopped at a door, whispered something, and the door opened without touch. Elena followed. Inside, rows of names carved into stone, thousands, all scratched out except one, the Duke's. And beneath it, something newly forming. A second name, not finished, not stable, but recognizable, Elena Hart. Her stomach dropped. That night, she confronted him. You knew, she said. The Duke didn't deny it. That the curse reacts to me? Yes. That I can weaken it? Silence. Then yes. Elena's voice sharpened. So I wasn't chosen. I was placed here. The Duke finally looked at her fully, and something almost like regret passed through his expression. I didn't choose you, he said. I requested you. The distinction hit harder than betrayal. You treated me like a tool, she said. I treated you like a possibility, he corrected. That's worse. The candles in the room flickered violently, the manor reacting, listening. The Duke stepped closer. For years, he said quietly, I believed it wanted control, and now I understand it wants continuation. Elena frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does, he said. When something like this is starved long enough, it stops trying to destroy its host. It tries to replicate it. A silence fell, heavy, pressing. Elena whispered, You're saying it wants another vessel. The Duke nodded. And you're compatible. The room tilted slightly in her perception. Not physically, emotionally. Like reality had shifted its weight, Elena backed away. You're insane. Possibly, he admitted. But I've survived it longer than anyone else. A pause. Then, softer, and you're the first thing it's ever responded to like this. The manor screamed that night. Not metaphorically, structurally. Walls bent inward, doors locked themselves, windows darkened like eyelids closing. Elena ran, barefoot across shifting corridors. The Duke was behind her, but not chasing. Guiding. Don't stop, he ordered. I'm not stopping. A sound erupted beneath them, like something enormous turning over in its sleep. The floor cracked. Black light spilled through the fractures. Elena fell, caught herself, looked down, and saw movement below the stone. Not creatures, not shadows, hands pushing upward, trying to remember how to become real. The Duke grabbed her arm, hard. Do not let it recognize you, he said urgently. Too late. The markings on his skin ignited, and for the first time, they moved toward her. Elena didn't just feel watched anymore. She felt selected. And beneath the manor, something answered her presence like a prayer finally understood. The ground beneath Ravenshade Manor split open. Not like cracking stone, like something underneath had finally decided it was done waiting. Elena fell to her knees as black light poured through the fractures in the floor, illuminating shapes that should not have had form. Hands. Too many. Pressing upward from below the manor like a starving thing, learning how to remember the surface world. The Grand Duke pulled her back violently. Do not look at them, he ordered. Elena shook. What are they? His voice dropped. They are what's left of the people who tried to host it before me. A silence swallowed everything. Even the manor itself seemed to hesitate. Then, a voice rose from beneath, not loud, not even forceful, familiar. Elena's name, whispered perfectly, like it had always known her. The Duke froze. It's recognizing you now. The Duke led her down, not because she was ready, because there was no longer any choice. The manor itself had begun to open pathways that did not exist before, corridors folding into themselves like anatomy revealing bone. Elena's breath shook. This place is alive, she whispered. No, the Duke said. It's remembering what it used to be. They reached the underground chamber, the same ruins the Duke had found years ago, but now expanded, rebuilt, awake. At the center stood the throne. Not empty anymore. Something sat on it, not clearly defined, not fully formed, like reality couldn't agree on what it was looking at. And when Elena stepped closer, it reacted. The air bent around her like gravity had changed its mind. The voice returned. Closer now. Vessel found. The Duke stepped in front of her instantly. No, he said sharply. I chose her. Elena turned to him. You chose me. His jaw tightened. Then, Finally, I tried to protect you from it by binding you to me. That hit harder than anything before. You didn't save me, she whispered. You delayed it, he admitted, and made me a target. A pause. Then quieter, yes, the entity shifted on the throne. The walls pulsed, like the entire chamber was breathing. And then memories flooded Elena that weren't hers. A burning city, a woman screaming her name. A symbol carved into her wrist she had never seen before. She staggered back. No, this isn't mine. The Duke looked at her carefully. It is, he said. You just never lived long enough to remember it. Elena shook her head violently. That's impossible, but the entity laughed. Not sound, emotion, recognition. The Duke spoke quietly now. You are not new to it. You are what it returns to. A chill spread through her chest. You're saying I've lived this before. The Duke nodded once, and every time I failed to stop it. The entity finally spoke clearly. I do not curse bodies. I inherit them. The chamber shook. The Duke's markings flared violently. He clenched his jaw. It doesn't want to kill you, he said urgently. It wants continuity. Elena stared at him. So every host becomes you? The Duke shook his head. No, a beat. Every host becomes it. Silence collapsed the room. Elena whispered. And you? His voice lowered. I am the last one who refused to disappear. The truth landed fully now. He wasn't the ruler of Ravenshade. He was the containment layer. The thing keeping everything from spreading outward. And it was failing. The entity rose. Not physically, conceptually. The air distorted so heavily. Elena felt her sense of self start to blur at the edges. Her name echoed again. Not spoken, extracted. The Duke grabbed her hand, and for the first time, he wasn't commanding. He was pleading. If it fully recognizes you, he said, you will replace me. Elena's voice trembled. And if I refuse, a pause. Then the truth. Then it will take us both. The ground split wider, the chamber collapsing inward like a collapsing memory. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. The man everyone feared, the man who never slept, the man who carried a kingdom's nightmares alone. And she realized something unbearable. He had been dying slowly for years, just to keep this thing contained. The entity spoke one last time. Choose. The Duke stepped forward, his body beginning to fracture with black light. I can end it here, he said. Elena frowned. How? His voice softened. By becoming the final host. Elena froze. No, yes, he said calmly. It stops with me and I disappear with it. That was the cost. Not victory. Containment. Erasure. Elena shook her head. There has to be another way. The Duke looked at her with something almost like peace. There isn't. A pause. Then, I waited for someone like you, he admitted. Someone it could recognize without consuming immediately. His voice broke slightly. And I'm out of time. The entity surged. The chamber screamed. The throne opened fully now, inviting, demanding. Elena stepped forward. The Duke reached out. No, he warned, but she kept walking, because she finally understood something. This wasn't about survival. It was about ending cycles. She turned back to him. If I run, she said, it will just find someone else. Silence. He couldn't deny it. Elena looked at the throne, then back at him. And if I stay, the Duke's voice barely held. Then you replace me. A pause. Then, or you override it. That wasn't in the rules. That wasn't supposed to be possible. But the entity reacted. For the first time, uneasily. Elena placed her hand on the throne. The moment she did, everything stopped. The Duke shouted her name. The chamber exploded with black light. Memories not hers flooded in. Every previous host, every failure, every cycle, and then silence, absolute. When it cleared, the Duke was on his knees again. But the curse was gone. The markings faded from his skin like ink washed clean. He looked up slowly. Elena, no answer. Then, a voice behind him, calm, familiar, different. I remember now, he turned. Elena stood where the throne had been, but she wasn't the same. The entity was gone, or rewritten. She looked at him. And for the first time in years, the Grand Duke smiled. Not because the curse was gone, but because someone had finally broken the cycle instead of continuing it. Outside, Ravenshade Manor collapsed quietly into dust, like it had never been a prison at all, only a memory. Weeks later, the kingdom spoke less about fear and more about silence, because the Grand Duke was no longer feared, and the girl who saved him was no longer found. Only one rumor remained, that somewhere beyond the ruins, a man still looked for a woman who once remembered everything and chose to forget it to save the world. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more cinematic, emotional stories like this. And comment below. Would you have chosen to break the curse or let someone else carry it forever?
And that's where everything changes. The curse didn't just break, it evolved. If you enjoyed this story, Make sure to like and subscribe for more cinematic twists like this. And would you have taken Elena's place, knowing it could cost your entire identity?